Hi, this is Sally's Book Club. We bring you the world's best books every day. Today we're exploring the book, The Mismeasure of Man. People often say big heads mean higher intelligence. Is that really true? We must acknowledge that great scientists like Hawking and Einstein had IQs over 200. That are IQ tests truly accurate? This book critically examines commonly accepted assumptions about intelligence in our daily lives. Since its 1981 publication, it's been translated into 10 languages with over 250,000 copies sold worldwide. Humans are Earth's only intelligent species, yet our understanding of intelligence remains incomplete. The book reviews humanity's intellectual exploration since the 18th century. What a history filled with prejudice and discrimination. Authored by Stephen Jay Gould, Harvard paleontologist and science historian who served as president of AAS. He was among the first recipients of the MacArthur Genius Grant. Gould was a staunch supporter of Darwin's theories. Since 1974, he wrote science columns for Natural History magazine. His collections, like Ever Since Darwin, combine scientific rigor with social critique and profound humanity. Let's explore this book through 3 key questions. First, can skull measurements accurately assess human intelligence? Second, do modern IQ tests truly measure intelligence effectively? Third, how should we properly understand human intelligence? Let's start with physical measurements of intelligence. Since ancient times, humans have recognized our unique intelligence and individual differences. In slave societies, the underclass were deemed biologically inferior. Throughout the 18th century, as massive numbers of African slaves were brought to America, this belief persisted. Even progressive thinkers like Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson believed Black people were biologically inferior in both intelligence and physique. Abraham Lincoln himself, while respecting Black soldiers' valor during the Civil War, still believed in inherent biological differences between races. By the 19th century, prominent European scientists continued dehumanizing Black people. Biologist George Cuvier claimed Black people resembled beasts and possessed subhuman intelligence. This toxic combination of racial bias and biological determinism shaped early intelligence studies. Biological determinism emerged post-scientific revolution, claiming all human traits had biological causes. This theory suggested even social structures were biologically predetermined. When racism dressed itself in the pseudo-scientific cloak, it birthed scientific racism, fundamentally flawed from inception. The American physician Samuel George Morton pioneered racial measurement practices. Beginning in the 1820s, Morton collected over 1,000 skulls by his 1851 death. Morton's collection served not scientific curiosity, but confirmation of his racial hierarchy hypothesis. He believed racial status could be determined through skull measurements, particularly brain size. This pseudo-scientific practice became known as craniometry. In Morton's 1839 work, Crania Americana, he claimed Germans had 90 cubic inch brains versus Africans 78. But is this actually true? The later researchers uncovered significant flaws in Morton's methodology. Morton measured skull capacity using mustard seeds, inconsistent measuring material. The compressible nature of seeds introduced measurement errors. Assistant's racial bias led to uneven seed packing in non-white skulls. The systemic bias amplified measurement inaccuracies. Researchers deliberately excluded smaller Caucasian and larger minority skulls from samples. Morton eventually recognized the seed method's unreliability. Switching to lead shot in later years revealed minimal racial differences. Asian skulls even surpassed European ones. Despite these revelations, craniometry gained more followers. Allbroca's school perfected craniometry in late 19th century. They improved methods by directly weighing brains post-mortem. Their conclusions claimed adult greater than elderly, male greater than female, eminent greater than ordinary, superior races greater than inferior races. They asserted direct correlation between brain size and intelligence. European brains averaged 1,200 to 1,300 grams, with geniuses reaching 1,860 grams, Cuvier, and 2,000 grams, Turgenev. But expanding samples revealed contradictions. Brilliant minds with small brains. Walt Whitman's brain weighed 1,282 grams. Anatole France's merely 1,117 grams, half of Turgenev's. Even renowned scientists like mathematician Gauss had average-sized brains comparable to ordinary people. Ironically, East Asians, considered inferior, showed larger average brain capacity than Europeans. Most shocking was criminals showing larger brain weights than law-abiding citizens, completely undermining the theory. Thus, the cranial capacity theory collapsed under its own contradictions. These measurements all assumed white superiority as predetermined truth. Every methodology served only to confirm imagined white cranial uniqueness. The pseudoscience ultimately aimed to justify white intellectual supremacy through biased measurements. Despite scientific trappings, these racist theories inevitably failed empirical scrutiny. Anthropometry emerged, measuring body proportions as supposed intelligence markers. Forearm to upper arm ratios became absurd racial differentiators. Whites supposedly had superior limb proportions, until data showed intermediate values between other races. Nose bridges and calf muscles became new, pseudoscientific battlegrounds for white supremacy claims. Every measurement eventually proved scientifically invalid. While some Black features were likened to apes, whites equally retained primate characteristics like thin lips. This biological comparison ultimately shamed white proponents through self-contradiction. These pseudoscientific metrics were also weaponized within racial groups to justify class discrimination. Criminal anthropologists claimed criminals exhibited ape-like features: thieves with large jaws, murderers with recessed foreheads, prostitutes with protruding cheekbones. These absurd standards were seriously implemented before being historically disproven. All right, that concludes our review of 19th century craniometry and anthropometry. These physical measurement attempts to establish racial hierarchies all ultimately failed scientific scrutiny. 19th century researchers tried proving Black people's biological proximity to apes, complete pseudoscience. Racially biased research inevitably produces flawed conclusions. If physical measurements failed, what about psychological assessments? This brings us to our second question. Can IQ tests accurately measure intelligence? The 20th century saw phrenology abandoned as scientific consensus emerged. These methods neither measured intelligence nor proved racial superiority. Psychology's rise introduced IQ testing as new intelligence metric. We're all familiar with IQ tests, but do they truly measure intelligence? To answer this, let's first understand, what exactly is IQ testing? IQ stands for Intelligence Quotient, a score from standardized cognitive ability tests. These tests claim to measure human intelligence through various problem-solving tasks. But does this numerical score truly reflect intellectual capacity? Let's examine its controversial origins and development. The prototype of IQ testing originated from French psychologist Alfred Binet's scale development. In 1904, commissioned by France's Minister of Public Education, Binet sought to identify children needing academic support through early intervention. The Binet scale assessed practical abilities, reasoning, comprehension, creativity, and error correction through daily life scenarios. Binet aimed to calculate a composite score reflecting children's learning potential through multifaceted assessments. 3 editions of Binet's scale were published during his lifetime, laying IQ testing's foundation. Today's IQ tests have become mainstream intelligence measurement tools adopted by institutions worldwide. But modern applications fundamentally contradict Binet's original intentions. Binet designed his scale solely to identify children needing educational assistance, not to rank intelligence. He established three fundamental principles. First, the score merely indicates current performance, not innate intelligence or theory validation. The number reflects practical needs rather than biological intellectual capacity. Second, it's an approximate tool for identifying learning disabilities, not creating hierarchies. Third, focus should be on helping low scorers through training, not labeling them as inferior. These principles embody Binet's original vision for intelligence assessment. Modern IQ applications directly oppose these foundational concepts. Today's IQ tests categorize people into genius, normal, or disabled groups without improvement focus. How did IQ testing become so distorted from its original purpose? The answer lies in early 20th century America's misinterpretation and misuse. Three American psychologists, Henry Goddard, Lewis Terman, and Robert Yerkes, became key figures in IQ testing's problematic spread. Remembering their names isn't crucial. What matters is understanding their role in distorting IQ testing's purpose. Henry Goddard first adapted Binet's scale for American use in the early 1900s. Goddard falsely linked test scores to genetic intelligence, providing pseudoscientific support for eugenics. Eugenicists argued low scores should be sterilized to improve society's genetic stock. They particularly targeted immigrants and marginalized groups as feeble-minded threats. This pseudoscience claimed preventing inferior reproduction would strengthen human genetics. Lewis Terman expanded Binet's work into the Stanford Binet intelligence scales, his true legacy commercializing IQ testing into mass-market pseudoscience. Terman believed IQ scores could dictate social roles from birth. She envisioned a caste system based on test results. Your score determines your destiny. This dangerous ideology claimed intelligence fixed your life trajectory permanently. Robert Yerkes conducted mass testing on 1.75 million WWI soldiers. His flawed analysis of military data supposedly proved intelligence was hereditary. By 1920s America, IQ testing became entrenched pseudoscientific practice. Let's summarize these psychologists' damaging legacy. They perverted Binet's diagnostic tool into mass categorization system, promoted false belief in fixed genetically determined intelligence. IQ tests categorized intelligence into hierarchies determining social status. Contrasting sharply with Binet's three principles, their conclusions completely distorted IQ testing's original purpose. Yet IQ testing profoundly influenced U.S. national policies. The 1924 Immigration Act restricting migrants originated from these flawed theories. Policymakers feared immigrant inferior genes would degrade American society. Eugenics gained mainstream acceptance through test misuse. IQ-based job requirements institutionalized employment discrimination. But does IQ truly measure intelligence accurately? The author exposes fundamental flaws in American IQ testing practices. Terman's system assigned mental ages, labeling adults as mentally deficient below age 12. Shockingly, average white Americans scored near the deficient threshold at mental age 13. Even Chicago's mayor was labeled mentally deficient by these tests. Researchers doubled down by blaming immigrants for these paradoxical results. They weaponized data against 1890 to 1920 Eastern or Southern European immigrants. Russian immigrants, mental age 11.34, Italian 11.1, Polish 10.74, all deficient. Why such low scores across immigrant groups? New arrivals took tests in unfamiliar languages under extreme stress. Testing conditions guaranteed failure, language barriers plus time pressure equals skewed results. Let's examine an actual IQ test question from that era to understand its flaws. Why is Christy Mathewson famous? Options: writer, artist, baseball player, comedian. This culturally specific question baffled immigrants and modern test takers alike. New immigrants lacked cultural context to answer such Americana focused questions. The test overflowed with similar knowledge dependent questions. Yerkes's military testing faced mass resistance and incomplete submissions. Many soldiers deliberately left tests blank in protest. Illiterate soldiers received 0 scores despite normal intelligence. The fatal flaw, mistaking cultural knowledge for innate intelligence. Modern IQ tests still can't eliminate cultural or educational biases completely. Elementary schools now use IQ tests for admissions. Problematic practice. High scores please parents, but low scores shouldn't define children. These tests measure specific cognitive skills, not fixed intelligence. Brain plasticity allows significant improvement through training. We've analyzed 20th century IQ testing's flawed foundations. Binet's original diagnostic tool became corrupted. From assistance tool to divisive labeling mechanism, modern IQ tests remain imperfect proxies for true intelligence. Now we address the book's third question. How should we truly understand intelligence? Since its conceptualization, humanity has sought to define intelligence's essence. 20th century research intensified this exploration dramatically. Scientists pursued an immutable intelligence entity, unaffected by environment. This hypothetical constant supposedly existed independent of learning or time. Influenced by genetic determinism, they sought intelligence in DNA code. Mathematical models attempted to quantify this theoretical constant. Such efforts were doomed from inception. How then should we conceptualize intelligence? Intelligence encompasses problem solving through knowledge integration, memory, observation, creativity, and judgment. It's not mere skill accumulation, but adaptive synthesis of abilities. While genetics provide foundation, environmental factors predominantly shape intellectual development. Let's use physical fitness as analogy for better understanding. Consider physical strength versus intelligence. Genetics influence strength, but training and nutrition determine actual capability. We can't isolate innate strength from developed capacity. Different sports require unique physical skill combinations. World-class sprinters may struggle with competitive swimming. Specialized physical abilities emerge through targeted training. Natural talent provides foundation, but dedicated practice creates excellence. Let's consider another analogy. Physical appearance. Can we objectively score beauty? Clearly impossible. Beauty standards vary dramatically across cultures and individuals. An African beauty queen might score low in Asia, while East Asian features gain higher ratings in Europe, demonstrating subjective cultural biases. Intelligence manifests similarly through cultural lenses. Human intelligence expresses itself through diverse real-world problem-solving contexts. Varied environments require different cognitive strengths, defying unified numerical scoring. Each unique individual deserves growth opportunities beyond restrictive test scores. What lessons should we learn from intelligence mismeasurement? First, scientific inquiry must eliminate preconceived biases. Prejudice transforms objective science into subjective distortion. Second, recognize mathematics' limitations in measuring consciousness. Not all human experiences can be quantified numerically. Natural science methods shouldn't be blindly applied to social sciences. Third, challenge genetic determinism's dangerous allure. Humans are biocultural beings. Genes provide potential, not destiny. Our genetic code doesn't dictate life outcomes. Consistent effort ultimately shapes our life trajectories. This concludes our exploration of the mismeasure of man and humanity's intellectual journey. From craniometry and anthropometry to IQ testing, humanity's quest to measure intelligence reveals how scientific progress emerges through error correction. That concludes today's episode of Daily Book Digest. Keynotes await below the audio. Join us again tomorrow.